extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signing a law on June 16th, 2021. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. And there's a link that you can attend remotely from. First up is approval for minutes of 11/17/2022. And I have to apologize of not being at the last meeting. I fully intended to, and evidently 5G has, the launch of 5G wiped out my hotspot ability where I was.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so with 5G, a lot of services, and you know, the guy of, can you see me now? Or can you hear me now? Yeah, they, it didn't work. So, I was not at that meeting of 11/17, so I don't have any comments in the minutes.
They looked good to me. Honestly, I was thinking that they've been so good lately. We're getting spoiled. I think Laura ought to throw in a couple of errors here and there just to keep us on our toes.
We've all been very spoiled, yes.
I had one question more way down on line 320 about something about the general code, but I was trying to make sense out of that.
320, you said?
320, the line. It's talking about taking the this stormwater bylaw out of the zoning code, but then it seems to be talking about taking it out of the general code. Maybe it means take it out to the general code.
Yes.
Okay.
But they could. Let's see. Stated she was told that they can do it, but she's unsure how. They could leave everything in the zoning code, but change the appeal to the Superior Court, or they can change it out of the zoning code. I think it's just out of the zoning code.
Okay.
Instead of general.
Other than that, I was at the meeting and I still learned things reading through the minutes, so it was great. So.
Okay, is that the only change or amendment? Okay, with that, do I hear a motion to accept the minutes of 11/17/2022 as amended?
So moved.
Second? Okay, all in favor by roll call vote?
Barrington,
Yes.
Zulik,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Balsamo.
Abstain.
I tried to call you in a roll call at the last meeting, Mark.
Okay, next up is RDA, 0 Corderville Road. So this is being continued.
Correct.
Yeah,
Probably just read it and do a quick.
was this opened last meeting or no?
Nope. This is
Okay.
new.
Thank you. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, December 8, 2022 at 7 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a request for determination of applicability for a project located at 0 Corderville Road, map 20 lot 10 for the applicant and owner. Abdulsatter Al-Janabi. I don't think that was quite right. The project description is a confirmation that wetland is isolated and non-jurisdictional under the Wetlands Protection Act. So they requested a continuance.
Yes. So on the Dropbox, Lucas did their review. It is their opinion that it is bordering vegetated wetlands. So the consultant has some responding to do, and they should be before us on the January 5th meeting.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to continue to January 5th?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor by a roll call vote?
Barrington,
Yes.
Zulik,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Balsamo.
Yes. Okay, we have 4 minutes to the next hearing. Can we take care of the potential violation of 31 presidential?
Sure can. So I am happy to report that we can take this off as a violation. I did get in touch with the homeowner. He does apologize because he's not quite moved into the house yet, so he's not getting regular mail. He's just kind of there as they're getting stuff done. They do live in town, so they're just moving from the other side. So I met with him on Tuesday, and I took a look, kind of throughout the property to see if there was anything of concern. They definitely did do some tree trimming along the driveway, very low hanging branches, very selectively cut, not kind of holistically. The tree itself still remains. There were a total of 3 full trees that were removed, 1 or 2 kind of all along the driveway, but 1 was on the opposite of the driveway, further away from the wetland. And that was cinched together with ratchet straps, clearly dead, was very tall and leaning towards the house. I agree that should have been removed. And then 2 kind of off in the back of the driveway, which the stumps still remain, and there was more of a hole in the trunk from rot than there was an actual tree. So I would agree that they did need to be taken down. There was some kind of new crushed stone placed over in a parking area where there was existing crushed stone. So I'm sure that made a lot of commotion, and that's probably what a lot of the abutters were hearing. They did chip some of the wood from the trees and the limbs they removed around the driveway, and did spread them out kind of like on the edges off the pavement. There was some a little bit kind of going downhill towards the wetland. I asked him to pull that back, and he was more than fine with that. So used it as kind of a educational, let him know that in the future, if he is going to be removing some more trees, just to reach out. I think the previous homeowner didn't kind of keep on top of some of the limbs. So even still, there are probably some limbs that need to be removed that are hanging over the house and pretty scarily over the driveway. So I will work with him in the future if we need to. But otherwise, should have contacted us for hazardous tree, but ultimately would have been approved and wasn't detrimental in any way to the wetland.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? No? Okay. Thanks for the update, Melissa.
Welcome.
So let's see. I've got 1 minute. Anybody have 7:10?
I have one more question. When we have a new person who moves into town, they receive notification of all the town bylaws.
Not necessarily all the town bylaws. So what I do is every month I get a list from the assessors of all the home sales, including just kind of within the family too. So I cross out kind of those that wasn't an actual sale, was just kind of discussion in between properties. And then we send them kind of a generic letter. I do check to see if the property does have wetlands near it or has buffer zone, and we add a specific section about their property being subject to some of the conservation commissioners or conservation bylaws. And then it's kind of a holistic, transfer stations here if you need youth and family services, or the library, senior center, etc. So I don't think they received necessarily the town bylaws, but I kind of put the blurb and I put the e-alert link on there and stuff.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have 7:10. So next up is request for determination of applicability, 125 Parkville Road, May 27 should be map 27, lot 2. Clearing of trees, brush, and reseeding of lawn. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, December 8, 2022 at 7:10 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a request for determination of applicability for a project located at 125 Parkerville Road, map 27, lot 2, for the applicant and owner, FD 250 Turnpike LLC. The project description is for work to cut trees, clear brush, and reseed lawn areas.
First, Mr. Chairman, I ask if you can hear me.
Yes.
Oh, thank God. Phew. Anyways, James Tatro from Azimuth Land Design here representing FD 250 Turnpike LLC, which is the owner of the property at 125 Parkerville. If you are heading east on Route 9, turn right onto Parkerville. It's not the house on the corner, it's the first house on the right after the corner. And What's been going on there is that they've been refurbishing the house, which had been, I guess, neglected for a bit of time at the end of the life of the previous owner. And as they were also working inside, they looked at the outside and decided to spruce up the lawn and clear off brush, I guess, especially over the septic system, and got a little too overzealous after doing that, and worked in areas obviously in the buffer zone and at the edges and just into the 20-foot no disturb zone. Mr. Chairman, I may have even been you. I forget who was the party who alerted Melissa. Melissa sent out an email to the owner and to me, and we got out there, looked at how much area that had been altered. It is just under half of the 1 acre lot. So it didn't seem to qualify as a stormwater management permit requirement. But there was obviously work in the buffer zone and work just into the 20-foot no disturb zone. We got a line of 8-inch straw wattles installed right away at pretty much at almost exactly the location that you see on the plan where it's shown. And we also sent in the plan that you see before you, which is a mitigation plan proposing plantings, especially just along the 20-foot no disturb zone to try and establish that as a limit of encroachment for the future. What you see on there, color coded, are various shrub, a bit of ground cover, and a couple of trees proposed to be planted out towards Parkerville along where the stone wall is at the property line. There are some bristly rose shrubs proposed. Getting a little further away, those are the red. Getting a little further away, the blue, which come out as almost circles there. The blue are Pennsylvania blackberry, and those two were actually species were shown just for being in the town's list of approved native species, and also for having a lot of thorns, and thereby establishing a little bit of a discouragement at the line there. And there's also some a little further away from Parkerville along that 20-foot no disturb zone, northern bush honeysuckle proposed. So there's 27 of those shrubs total. Again, there's 32 ground cover plants proposed in front of those. And at the far, I guess you'd say sort of western end of the of where the intrusion was, we proposed a couple of eastern redbud trees. Again, this is from the town's native species list. And these are all from the species that were, I think, regarded as being bee or butterfly promotive. And again, the site has been seeded, but I think I was just out there this morning taking a look. I don't know that the seed has taken much. I think it happened too late, unfortunately, in the season. So they're going to have to reseed in springtime. But they've got the straw wattles in place. They will plant these species. Again, the 27 shrubs, 32 ground covers, and 2 trees as proposed on that plan you see before you, the mitigation plan in springtime. And I just want to extend to the commission the apologies of the owner. He didn't realize that the folks out there on the yard were going way beyond what they were allowed. And I think they apologize also. And so I don't think there's been any erosion from the site. And now it has I think purely a topsoil surface. And again, the straw wattles are in place. So we would ask if the commission would please issue a negative determination with conditions that this mitigation plan be enacted in April, I guess, basically when most of these things could be planted.
All right, thank you. And yes, it was me that alerted Melissa. And the reason for doing that at the time was the Bobcat, they were exiting the property on the south side of the house, out on the Parkerville Road, driving down Parkerville Road and exiting it back onto the site on the north side of the road, and made a mess of the road in terms of mud everywhere. that when you drove your car through it, you just picked the mud up and tossed it all over your vehicle. There was absolutely no regard for any sort of mitigation or thought with respect to dragging all that open dirt and mud and whatnot, because we had some pretty good rains back then, and driving down Parkerville Road. I do notice, that there are straw wattles now that go pretty much around the north side of the property and down along the east side of the property and up on the south side somewhat to, protect anything from getting off the side onto the roadway. Anybody else have any questions or comments here from the commission?
James, do you maybe want to talk about kind of in an unrelated but related, I think I was talking with Mark earlier, and Kevin let me know that there is kind of that access off Parkerville Road that is kind of being reutilized. It has been there in existence. I did confirm that with some Google Street Maps. It's been overgrown a little bit because the building has been vacant. But anyone who is also familiar with Parkerville Road and that section, that people do park along the roadway a lot. So there is kind of some concern, at least from my point. I was mostly concerned about the erosion first in the driveway, but then kind of looking off to the side. And it does extend to this property at 125 Parkerville. So one thing that the applicant or owner has requested or kind of discussed is taking some millings and cutting back some of the mud along the roadway on Parkerville, both in front of 125, but also going over on this side where the access is, and cutting out some of that mud, putting some millings down so that there isn't that continuous rut and erosion that's happening that ultimately just kind of gets pushed off into that little stream that goes between it. So that's something, if the commission is willing to discuss tonight, if that would be something favorable, I think we can work it into this RDA if the commission is comfortable with that. By the access to 250 Turnpike, that would be very spot filling, not actual cutting the mud, taking it out and putting the millings in. It would just be, it's already pretty compacted from years of use. So that would just kind of be spot filling to ensure that, that it doesn't continue to rut, because people do park there, existing homeowners as well.
Is this the same
So
property?
the only people that have been parking there is since they've been doing this renovations in the house. There's the abandoned truck at the corner of Parkerville that
I was gonna
has
say, is that the same
growth
property?
growing out of it.
Yeah, is that the same property where that truck is?
The truck is right at the corner. This one is like the house further down.
Okay, so that truck is not associated with this property.
No, that truck's been sitting there for years with trees growing out of the bed of it. I honestly don't know why the town doesn't make them take it away, but that's another topic for another day. But the vehicles that have been parking along this house right here are all the folks working on the house. They were parking in the driveway until they put the straw wattles up, but now they can't park in there.
So is that something that the commission doesn't really have an appetite for? And I think that's more than fine.
And I think the ground's going to freeze here shortly.
Because they have been in discussions with DPW director, because they were discussing that there is a heavy crown in the road. So both Parkerville and 250 is getting a lot of water. So it is something I think they've discussed with the DPW, and is something that has been historically on their list to look at. So it may come up again, whether it's from the town or the applicant, if the commission isn't quite interested in discussing it for this property.
So just for my understanding, what are fillings?
Millings, like road
millings. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
So they would take out, essentially kind of cut in, dig under, take out that, essentially mud, for lack of a better term, put in the millings. They could put loam and seed on top. That was one option that they gave, or they would just leave it kind of the hard compact.
Are the millings they talking about like asphalt millings,
Yeah.
the stuff that's reclaimed from the road?
Yep.
How are they gonna grow grass on top of that?
They'd put loam on top, I guess. That was what they stated.
Okay, okay. Um,
It could be something that we request kind of more of a approximate plan with areas and location to talk about.
So Parkerville Road is all country drainage. You know, there's a catch basin at the corner of Schuyler Drive and Parkerville to catch Schuyler Drive's water. But Parkerville has got that crown on it to get the water off the road. And I mean, I've lived in the neighborhood down the street since 1985, and I can tell you before they paved that road, it was like the Clifford Road issue. So they've kind of fixed it with the crown. So I'm hoping they don't go backwards here.
To piggyback on Melissa's point, I don't think what is being discussed would eliminate the crown. I think it's just acknowledging that the water sheds off to that side, and any because it gets a little moist from always getting the water, any vehicle going onto it immediately kind of tears it up, and so you don't get necessarily the grass, or the vegetation staying established there. But as you said, if there's not an appetite on the part of the commission for that add-on measure, that's fine.
I mean, I can tell you that, I mean, that's the only way I can exit my neighborhood, right? To go anywhere is other than, the Dunkin' Donuts. And until they started working on it, on this house, there was never a drainage problem coming off that lot on the Parkerville Road or vice versa.
Okay.
So I think it's all because of the vehicles parking there to work on the house and whatnot. They had a dumpster in the, I don't know if it's still there now or not, a dumpster in the driveway for quite a while to take away all the debris, and that driveway is pretty small, so that kind of consumed the driveway.
So maybe if the frequency of parking there goes down to normal, then it'll be okay.
I think so. It's just my opinion.
Mark?
I think I'd agree with that.
Mark, just so you know, there is a hand up in the audience when you're ready.
Sure. I just want to see if there's any other comments from the commission members. No? Okay. So I'll open up to the public
Okay.
for any comments or questions.
So I'm going to call on John Palmer first. If you could just introduce yourself and your address.
Yes, hi, John Palmer, 131 Parkerville Road. So 2 doors down from this property. And so the only question I would have is there are 6 very large maples and oaks that border Parkerville within 10 feet of the road. So I think they're on town property. So I don't know if it's a matter for the Conservation Commission or not, but you guys tell me. I'm just wondering what we're doing to protect those very large oaks and maples that border Parkerville Road. They're not showed on the site plan that you have before you here.
Yeah, I am familiar with those trees. But when you say protect them, well, I think one thing talking about protecting them, when we talk about milling the area between the road and the house and putting mills and compacting that there and so forth, would be I guess towards the area of not protecting him. Leaving things alone the way they should be there would be more of a protection for them.
Well, if I may just add one more point, there was a gas main that was put into the house. And that work in particular, I think would impact, the root structure of those trees.
So I was away when that gas main went in, but my wife did tell me about that because they had a, safety police officer doing duty down there for the traffic. It was unclear to me exactly how they got that gas line into that house, because it doesn't look like they opened up the road. Or did they?
No,
I do not know.
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, because I drove down trying to see if the road got open. I couldn't tell. It didn't appear that it had. So,
Not to my knowledge that the road was open.
yeah, okay. So yeah, it's unclear to me as to how they got that line into the home. But that would not be our jurisdiction unless they're, in the buffer zone, for example.
So the six very large oaks and maples whose jurisdiction are those under? Is that planning board or conservation commission or both?
Either planning or DPW, as it's a town tree.
Assuming they're in the
Right away.
the road right away.
Is there a way to put that on the docket for the planning board or DPW?
I can definitely send an email to the town planner tomorrow discussing your concerns about those trees. Yeah, I could send them an email and they could follow up with the homeowner. She often takes a ride by and does an assessment as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure thing. Any other questions, comments from the public? Nope. Okay. Okay, hearing none. What's the consensus of the commission for this request for determination of applicability? Been shuffling through things. You're on mute.
All right. Melissa, are you you've seen it recently. Are you generally comfortable with what's proposed for mitigation?
I am comfortable. Yeah, my only proposed condition would be, to submit a annual report on the status of the mitigation plantings at least or a year after a complete growing season has passed.
Okay, and because there's some replanting, it sounds like that will have to happen in the spring.
Yep.
The wetland mix.
Mhm.
So I would be comfortable with the determination of non-applicability condition as Melissa described.
Yeah, I guess I would want to have a condition that the the erosion controls, the straw wattles are kept up. Since it doesn't look like that site's going to be stable until sometime in mid to late spring. Nothing's going to grow on it. And there is a hill there that goes from the home down to Parkerville Road. I don't think anything would get across the road because of the crown in the road, but
So I can add that erosion controls are kept in proper working condition until site is properly stabilized.
yeah.
So in other places, we had asked for boulders or some other kind of permanent monumentation, maybe with signs. Did that warrant this here?
You could do something like that. You could put some sort of signage, I think would work best here. I think other sites that we've used boulders, there's boulders been on the property that they've been able to utilize. There's not really those here. There is this stone wall that kind of runs along the property line, which appeared to be at least in this upper area, the limit of lawn previously. So they did kind of restore some of the existing lawn area, at least, to the back of the septic system. But if you wanted to, I can put a condition about proper signage, dictating the 20-foot no touch like we did commonly on Brigham most recently. And that can be along the 20-foot, to be placed in conjunction and review with the agent, prior to installation, which is what our common condition is.
The proposed plantings will kind of create a
Yep.
little bit of a barrier.
Yeah, and that's what James was talking about in terms, he picked the thorny ones to dissuade people
Yeah.
going in there, which I like.
Yeah, that area to the north of the house and south of the detention pond, kind of where that wetland is a very common deer passageway. I've almost got a few hood ornaments right in that area a few times. All right, so do I hear a motion for a negative determination of applicability with the included provisions?
Sorry, hold on. Are we including signage? We didn't really get a consensus from everyone. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
I thought you added that.
I did. I just want to make sure we're good with that.
Comfortable with that.
Okay, perfect. So then we have 3 conditions: annual monitoring, erosion controls, and signage.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor by roll call vote?
Farrington,
Yes.
Zulik,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Osmato.
Yes,
Perfect.
thank you.
And I want to once again extend my apologies to the commission. The folks doing that work just weren't up to speed on what's required. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, 720, request for determination of applicability, 20 Sears Road, map 64, lot 2. This is demo existing home and pool, backfill and stabilize after fire. In accordance with Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, December 8, 2022, at 7:20 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a request for determination of applicability for a project located at 20 Sears Road, map 64, lot 2, for the applicant JBJ Construction on behalf of the owners Louise and Robert DePietri. The project description is demo of existing structures on the site, backfill and stabilize.
So we have Justin here to answer any questions, but essentially this is the home that caught at fire on 20 Sears Road. So it does need to be demolished for safety due to the extent of the fire. There is no current plan for new construction yet, but when they do, they will come before us with a full application. So right now, this is really just to get this site safe and stabilized. So they'll be removing the home and the pool, and then, stabilizing as necessary over the winter. And then if they need to, seed, if they're not going to rebuild right away in the spring, they will do so.
Okay. Any questions?
I figured just our standard condition about erosion controls to be reviewed and approved prior to construction, and just final stabilization as needed throughout the winter.
Yeah. It seems pretty straightforward to me.
Yes.
So it sounds like a motion for negative determination of applicability with conditions as Melissa just recited.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor by roll call vote?
Farrington,
Yes.
Zulik,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Osmato.
Yes.
All right, Justin, I'll get you this permit and I'll sign up on the demo permit in the morning. So that should be all set.
Perfect. And we'll reach out once the erosion control is installed for a site meeting.
Great. Thank you.
Yep, thanks. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye now.
Bye.
Okay, next up, 7:30. NOI 8 Brigham Street, DEP number 290-1100 in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw. The Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, December 8, 2022 at 7:30 PM via virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at 8 Brigham Street, map 50, lot 54, for the applicant and owner Whitney Street Home Builders, LLC. The project description is construction of a single-family home, house, septic system, and associated site work.
I think James is just trying to load back in. So in the meantime, I'll just update you on from the last meeting. What we were just waiting for was the stormwater calculations, the invasive species management plan, and we have received those. They provided the calculations that they can do at least a 1-inch storm. They provide an invasive species management plan on sheet 2. So I did put some conditions together based on our previous discussions, but also to capture the riverfront area analysis. So I made sure that there is a finding of fact regarding that 10% limit, since they are at 9.4%, and that any further alterations on any lots that were a part of that original lot that was subdivided needs to take into consideration that existing 9.4 and can't, go over 10%. As kind of outlined at the last meeting and in Joe's review. So on my end, I have everything that I need. I don't know if you guys had any other questions.
No questions from the commission? Any from the public?
I don't see any hands.
No. Okay. So I was not at the last meeting for this, so I presume you have a set of conditions ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor via roll call vote?
Barrington,
Yes.
Zulik,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Osmato.
Yes. Okay.
Since we have 30 seconds, do you want to issue it? I can read you the conditions if you'd like.
Sure.
So I have regarding a finding of fact about the ORAD that is previously confirming the wetland delineation. The roof drain infiltration has been designed to withhold at least the 1-inch storm. It shall be maintained in perpetuity with the O&M and survive the expiration of the order conditions, certificate of compliance. Boulders are going to be placed along the 20-foot buffer zone, and associated signage that depicts a no-touch area is remaining consistent with the other adjacent lots. The invasive species management plan has been noted on sheet 202 of the approved site plan. Prior to removal of invasive species, qualified professionals shall provide a report and propose means of removal to be reviewed and approved by the agent prior to implementation. And then an annual report shall be submitted for 2 years after initial removal and being conditioned on the certificate of compliance. During the public hearing process, an administrative update was permitted and voted on by the commission for the change in location of the drainage outlet at 10 Brigham Road and demonstrated on the approved site plan. And then the total riverfront area impacts the 9.4%. And the applicant has demonstrated that they are under the 10% limit. Any future development on lots that were a part of the original parcel of land that was subdivided must cumulatively assess the total amount of riverfront area disturbed and shall not exceed a total of 10%. Those are all the site-specific ones.
Any discussion over those? No? All right, so do I hear a motion to issue the order of conditions as cited by Melissa?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor via roll call vote?
Barrington,
Yes.
Zulik,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Passamato.
Abstain. Okay, 740 continued stormwater management permit, notice of intent. 200 Turnpike Road, DEP number 290-1096 and SMP FY 22-9. They've asked for a continuance.
Correct. We got
Okay.
Fussin O'Neill comments. The applicant still has to respond and they still need to address the outstanding wetland comments as well. So we're gonna have a sit down or discussion with Joe to make sure we're all on the same page because the plans have changed since that initial review. So we're still working on those, but at least I think we're kind of on the same track again with planning. So the reviews are happening simultaneously again.
Okay. So this would be continued into January 5th?
Yep.
All right, do I hear a motion to continue to January 5th?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor by a roll call vote?
Farrington,
Yes.
Zulik,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Passamato.
Yes. Okay, those are all the scheduled public hearings. SMP bylaw and regulation update changes.
There's not too much to report at this meeting. I kind of just want you guys to really take a look at the bylaw for to kind of give our final stamp of approval on the January 5th for inclusion on the town meeting warrant for the spring. I did put in the placeholder for this with Mark Purple, and I did send an email to both him and town council to discuss the change both from the bylaw out of the zoning code and the proposed language that would require, what those meeting warrants would look like and the necessary steps we have to take because it's currently in the zoning code. I think we have to have certain public hearings with planning and select board. So we have been working out those. So those final kinks should hopefully be finished by our January 5th meeting so that we can kind of have that final document ready to submit to the select board for the warrant. So I think the only
Okay.
thing that just needs to be changed is that one section about appeals that I think town council would be the best person to give us the best language for that section.
I agree.
Melissa, if it works out that this can happen, I wouldn't mind sitting in on that meeting
Yeah, absolutely.
with Mark Purple and town council.
Mhm. Sure.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, if it's a problem, no big deal, but if it can work out, I'd love to do it.
I doubt it's a problem.
Okay, I'm going to hand the reins over to Ben for the next topic, which is Chestnut Hill Farm Management Plan and OSPC concerns.
Yeah, so I learned over the weekend that well, this goes back to the meeting that Kevin and Melissa and I and others attended with trustees at Chestnut Hill Farm to talk about the management plan and the final details to get that all wrapped up. And Melissa and Kevin may recall quite a bit of talk about the bobolink habitat and various steps that can be taken to restore the habitat and bring the bobolink population back. And there was some grazing restrictions were discussed. Stopping grazing. No grazing until July 15th to allow the bobolinks time to raise at least one brood. Apparently they'll do 2 broods sometimes during a season. And you may recall that Whit Beals, who was there, who in fact grew up with the bobolinks and knows an awful lot about them, pointed out that one thing the bobolinks require is in the spring when they show up looking for nesting areas, they need grass that's tall enough to offer them enough cover that they'll feel safe building a nest. So anyhow, what happened is over the past couple of weeks, Mr. Beals noticed that the sheep had been brought into the bobolink area and had grazed it extensively. And the grass, I went out there today just to take a look before tonight's meeting. And it really does, it kind of looks like it's been mowed. The grass is very short. What caused the disturbance to the bobolink habitat prior was up until last year, there was a pretty large number of goats and sheep together that I think their grazing needs, unintentionally, but kind of pushed the bobolinks out. So they've been gone for 2 years. And with this latest impact to their preferred area, it's starting to look like it'll be 3 years really without any nesting bobolinks in that area. Mr. Beals points out that I know he had hoped to be able to attend tonight, but was unable to. But I'm trying to faithfully relay what he had told me, that after a few years of not having success, they will tend to give up on an area. And in fact, their lifespan isn't, very much longer than 3 years to begin with. We're now in a position where hopefully we can stop the impacts to the habitat and coax in some new bobolink tenants to this area, this one big field in particular. I think some of the frustration that Mr. Beals felt, and I kind of share, was during this meeting, we talked about this with the trustees, and they did commit to trying to preserve the taller grass, over winter, so that the bobolinks have something to return to. And without knowing anything more, my guess is, the left hand may not have communicated with the right hand, and obviously I don't suspect any kind of intentional act or anything like that, but it was overlooked, and it's ended up being an impact to the bobolink habitat. Now, Melissa spent a good deal of time going through the conservation restriction document and the various drafts of the farm management plan, just to see where this sits, relative to whether or not it's a CR violation. And while there's nothing in the document that specifically says, these are the steps that shall be taken in the bobolink habitat area, under the allowed uses and prohibited uses section of the document, it does talk about the preservation of existing habitats. I'm not necessarily going to, beat this drum too hard, but I do feel like this is a violation of the conservation restriction. But whether it is or isn't, I hope that we can get this addressed in the farm management plan to simply prevent it from happening again. A suggestion that was made by Open Space is that the bobolinks are a habitat of concern. A lot of study has been done about them, and there are some guidance documents available that speak to how they can coexist on a farm. And it's recommended that we speak with the trustees about that. And in the absence of anything else, the one thing that didn't make it into the management plan was the idea of the current draft of the management plan, was preserving the taller grass in this area over winter. It was just missed. We talked about it in the meeting, and in reviewing the document, I forgot it when I was looking through the document. I forgot to even look for it. I think we should get that in there. And I think one way to address it is to put some sort of hard limit on the latest that grazing will take place, so that the grass will have some amount of time to recover during the fall, to provide adequate habitat in the spring. So I think I got all of that right. Melissa, you spoke with Mr. Beals too. Do I have that
I did. He left me a message, and then you had talked with him,
Yeah.
and I didn't get in contact with him after that. I left a message, but I didn't hear back. One thing that I did think of today that I didn't think of, unfortunately, until I was on my way home, was I do have a binder from when the conservation restriction was implemented that I believe is a baseline survey. So what I can do, probably early next week on Monday, is take a look through there and see if there was anything specifically called out about this area and the bobolink nesting habitat. And that, I think, would kind of give the commission a little bit more grounds to have a little bit more of a stronger hand in this area, because it's kind of a documented section of property, that was managed for bobolink habitat. So while not specifically called out in the CR or the management plan very well, I think that might give you guys a little bit more of an oomph to require that in the farm plan. So what I can do, between now and the next meeting, if you guys are comfortable, is probably review that baseline document, see what else I can find, but kind of start that discussion with the trustees again about incorporating kind of more holistically what we've discussed at that meeting, kind of with that we met internally with the trustees, because I was supposed to receive the updated management plan, I thought, right after Thanksgiving, which I have not seen yet. So I have to follow up with DA regardless. But they were updating that farm plan to the NRCS standards, which was the requirement of the CR. So I'm hopeful that the next iteration will be more inclusive. And I will do kind of a little bit more research on the bobolink habitat too, and kind of see what those recommendations are, to kind of give back to the commission, to see kind of which not direction, but how heavy of a hand you want to take, and or strong language to put to have, that restriction in place to ensure that the bobolinks kind of continue to nest there throughout the years, because it was a very protected interest, from what I understand, when the property was purchased, the conservation restriction was purchased.
My understanding too. Yeah, I went on a site walk there 7 or 8 years ago, led by the former farmer, and just during a 45-minute site walk, we saw easily a dozen bobolinks flying around that area of the farm. There was a large population there, and there simply aren't any nesting pairs there anymore. One thing just to say is, I certainly don't expect that this is going to be any kind of a serious disagreement with the trustees. During our meeting, I think Kevin and Melissa would echo this, that they were very open to the protection of the bobolinks and viewed them as an important part of the property. That's why I suspect it was an oversight. Boy, it's regrettable, but it was an oversight. And if we can capture it in the management plan, I think we can get it taken care of and get it memorialized appropriately. And hopefully this can be a document that will, the folks who do the farm operations will be able to reference it, and this kind of thing won't happen in the future. But I kind of expect this will be an easy thing to take care of, but an important thing to take care of.
What area of the farm is the bobolink nesting area located?
It is, if you
Pull up a
start,
map.
yeah.
Pull up the map. That'd be great.
Hold on, because I do this every single time.
And how tall do the grasses need to be? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can tell you, I took a couple of pictures out there today. It's tough to really show in a picture, but
like a foot tall or something, or?
I mean, the grass as it stands right now is like 3 or 4 inches.
Okay.
And all I know is that it needs to provide enough cover that they feel that they can hide from predators, off in the tree lines.
Yeah, sure.
If they're young.
All right.
Yep.
So this is the trailhead parking. Essentially, this field in here is the 10 acres of bobolink habitat.
Okay. All right.
So it's kind of like the top half of the hill.
Yeah. Okay. So see where it says pasture
Mm,
to the left of that?
Yep.
Yeah, right there. Why doesn't the farm use that? I know they did a little bit, but
I
I don't think
think,
that's very heavily utilized for grazing.
yeah, so one thing that one thing that the commission was discussing as part of the farm plan update is a better kind of description of the rotational grazing. So they don't necessarily graze on every single pasture every year. They do rotate to ensure, proper quality and regrowth. So that's probably why, but I don't know the specifics of, how much this pasture gets utilized over others.
Except for the grassland habitat, it sounds like they've used that annually.
I mean, it is centrally located, so I do understand why. But yeah.
It appears to have been, at least my recollection for the past 3 years, I seem to recall at some point during each of the years, seeing sheep or sheep and goats out there.
I would agree.
Yeah, the reason I was asking about how tall the grass has to be, Ben, I think you made the comment that they can't, do any grazing there until after the 15th.
Yeah.
Right, but how many days or weeks can they graze there before they need to stop so the grass has a chance to grow in the fall, so it can be tall enough for the spring? Depending
It's
on how
almost
tall the
like not
grass has
worth
to
it.
be,
Yeah.
it might not be any time that they can use it.
Yeah,
So-
I'll definitely do some research into, proper bobolink habitats and what their preferred nesting areas are.
So there's definitely some of this in the Breakneck Hill portfolio because of that field out back, why we don't have the cows. So let's not reinvent the wheel. We've got a lot of information. at our hands.
They're trying to get them at Breakneck Hill, but so far they haven't seen nesting pairs there yet.
Yeah, and I
It
think
seemed-
historically when the cows were there, it was typically just, in August, they were allowed to graze in that grassland bird habitat. But after then, I think they dissuaded the cows from being in there so that the grass height was properly established by the time the bobolinks came back in the spring. So I can, look back at the cow fund as well.
Yeah. One trouble that they had at Breakneck Hill Farm is, so that obviously bobolinks are sensitive to predators. If there's a perch for, a hawk or an owl within, it's something like 100 or 150 feet.
Yeah.
A single tree, like one of the apple trees on Breakneck Hill Farm, will drive them away from 100 or 150 foot radius around that tree. And I think with all the apple trees at Breakneck Hill and the other singular trees here and there, it was enough coverage to make them uneasy with the whole area. Now, I know some of those trees were taken down not too long ago in an attempt to try to open some areas up. But Mark, to your point, this is something that's been actually studied quite a bit, how grazing can coexist with bobolink habitat. And it has been done successfully in other places. Obviously not intensive year-round grazing, but compromises have been found that provide habitat for the bobolinks and allow some grazing to take place on the property. So I'm hopeful, and in fact, it sounds like the Beals family achieved that themselves historically. So I'm hopeful that there's a solution there that we can find that makes everyone happy.
Okay.
Right. So I'll do a little research first, do some homework, and then I will, reach out to the trustees, see where their current farm management plan stands with the revisions from previously, and then try to make sure that these kind of concerns are worked in a little bit better for the next draft.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, any other business before the commission? Any updates or anything?
Yeah, so we talked about 250 Turnpike and that access, so that is resolved, that is pre-existing. Just kind of random inspections, 163 Parkerville, I just reminded them to refresh the erosion controls and it looked like they needed a new construction entrance. I noticed some dirt in the road this week. And then for Breakneck Hill Farm Dump, as an update, unfortunately, the abutter has not yet signed the access agreement. I believe that she is going to talk with DEP, I think tomorrow or early next week with the options they gave her. She still has some concerns about access, tried to propose a land swap or us purchasing the property, which just unfortunately isn't feasible. You know, we have no legitimate reason to purchase as well, because we technically don't have to do the cleanup on her property. But, you know, as we kind of both were put in this unfortunate situation of having this on both the sites, you know, the town did take the responsibility to do so. So we're still kind of waiting on that. I know that she did meet with Mark Purple, I believe today, to have some discussions. You know, she had concerns about budget and that this hasn't, you know, been to town meeting yet, which we have, you know, explained that we can't. There is a placeholder on the town meeting warrant for the appropriation of funds for the cleanup, but we can't understand what that number is until we finish our test pits. And, you know, it's kind of at the point where we need a yes or a no. If it's a no, then we will move forward with the site report and projected plan for our property solely. But if it's a yes, then we are going to get those test pits. You know, we are lucky that this winter has been pretty mild. So if we do need to remobilize, we still have that ability. TRSD is still waiting in the wind, you know, to react as soon as possible if we get that access agreement signed, because we'd have to have the NOI sheet updated. And one other thing updated that I'm forgetting right now. And then the erosion control is put out and the test pit's completed. And then, you know, if there's any reporting that needs to happen, they need to put together the site assessment report for DEP to review. DEP gets those comments, and then we can start building our site plan cleanup. So we are still trying to get that. I'm hopeful that we'll come to a resolution either way in the next coming week, I'm hoping. But otherwise, you know, we're kind of caught in the status quo, but DEP has been copied on all communication, so they are familiar with the you know, concerns of the abutter. So we're still working through those. And then the last thing I had that Kevin nicely brought to my attention that I took way too long to understand what he's saying is on 84 Main. Commissioners who've been on a little while might remember that there is a restrictive covenant on a portion of the property, mostly where the pond is. And Kevin made the astute observation that that generator building may be within that restricted covenant section, which does not allow permanent structures. So that's something that is, if the commission is okay with, I think we should reach out to the owner and the engineer to ask for, you know, whether it's all of the recent as-built we've gotten does not show that structure on it. It usually stops right after the existing carriage house because we've kind of focused along the reservoir side. But just to show quickly, it's kind of hard to see on this plan, but this is the area, of course it's sideways, but where the restrictive covenant is. And the generator is probably about here. So it may be partially in, partially out, or fully in, fully out. But that was a good call by Kevin, and I thank you by that. So that's something to think about.
So that restricted area identifies parking.
Yes, it's just no permanent structures could be.
No permanent structures.
Yeah, so this is a kind of a cleaner area where that restricted area is.
Okay.
Okay.
And so that's why we had the conversation of if the pond was a permanent structure. We agreed that it wasn't. It was a stormwater feature. But sorry to scroll so quickly. Yeah, so no permanent structures shall be permitted on the surface of the ground within the restricted zone. And only could do a drainage system.
So the parking spaces might have been a problem too, right? Because they're on the surface. I don't know.
I guess it depends if you consider asphalt permanent structure.
Yeah. They're not there anyway, because I think the generator shed's sitting on top of them, but
Good catch, Kevin. Wow.
Is Peter Bemis the engineer?
I believe he's still the current engineer. Yes. So if you
I'll
guys
reach
are
out to him.
all right, I will do that in the morning. I think that's.
You know if the current owner is living there yet?
I don't think so. No, I think that's still the goal, but I don't believe they have. I don't know if they have an occupancy permit yet, but he's definitely not living there yet.
Yeah. They certainly have it sort of decorated for the holidays.
Okay, I think that's all I have.
All right. Well, thank you. Anybody have anything else?
Yeah.
Okay, if not, everybody have a happy and joyous holiday season.
You as well.
See you all next year.
thanks.
See you next year.
See you next year.
Good night, everybody.
All right, good night. Meeting
Hello,
adjourned.
we need a just.
We have to move to close it.
Yeah.
We do. Yep. So our motion for adjourn,
So
So
moved.
moved.
a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Barrington,
Yes.
Zulik,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pasmato.
Yes.
Right.
All right,